A next generation update for Fallout 4 will be arriving in 2023, and well, it looks like we have some sort of release dates for when it could arrive within 2023, and in this video we'll be going over what we know about this Fallout 4 next gen update and this possible release window. We'll go over everything we know in this video. We know for certain that it's coming out this year, so we know that we're getting closer and closer to the release date as we do progress through 2023. So yeah, this video is going over the Fallout 4 next gen possible release window and everything we know about Fallout 4 next gen version and generally what to expect. So let's waste no more time and let's get straight into it. First of all, we're going to go over what we know so far about this Fallout 4 next gen update and yeah, everything that we know and what to expect as a player when you play Fallout 4 and when you do play this next generation update when it arrives. So first of all, we'll go over what Bethesda have said themselves about this next generation version for Fallout 4, and this was part of the 25th anniversary events for the whole Fallout franchise, but mainly focused actually on Fallout 76 and, you know, in-game events for Fallout 76, but there was actually a bit of info about Fallout 4 within the websites for the 25th anniversary. There was an article mainly going over Fallout 76, to be honest, just going over some events that will be happening in the game and some general items returning to the Atomic Shop and everything like that, but there was also some info about Fallout 4, and it says this: prepare for the future, a next-gen update is coming to Fallout 4, coming in 2023. This free update will be available for Xbox Series X and S, PlayStation 5 and Windows PC systems, including performance mode features for high frame rates, quality features for 4K resolution gameplay, bug fixes, and even more Creation Club content. And that's literally all they have said about this. They've said nothing else at all. But there we go. So first of all, we know the platforms that it is arriving on. We know Xbox Series X and S and PlayStation 5. That is a given. Xbox Series X and PlayStation 5 will probably get pretty much the exact same, whereas on the Xbox Series S, it'll probably be similar, but obviously the graphics won't quite be as good, and there's a chance that it will only get 60 frames per second instead of a possible 120 frames per second, which we'll get onto soon. And there's also going to be on the Windows PC systems, which obviously means the Steam launcher and everything like that. And of course, if you have it through Xbox, then I assume that will count as well. So yeah, pretty standard there, to be honest. Those are the platforms that we always see these next generation versions arrive on. Obviously PC, it's nice to have it in there, although on PC it might not necessarily feel that different. The only real thing I could see that could possibly change, which I don't know if it will, but basically at the moment, if you put the game above 60 frames per second on PC, then the game just sort of speeds up. Basically it relies on the frame rates for certain animations in the game, which is a really odd way of doing things, and that shows within the game. Basically if it goes above 60 frames per second, it's going to feel very unnatural. The game's just going to feel really fast paced, and yeah, it is just going to feel like you're playing it, you know, 5 times the speed that you usually would. So yeah, it's not an ideal way to play. Many would consider that unplayable, so hopefully that'll be fixed with this next generation version. It's not really a bug necessarily, but it is, you know, something not ideal, especially as obviously in 2015 60 frames per second was pretty standard. People didn't really go above that, but these days 7-8 years later, you know, people expect more than 60 frames per second, so hopefully that will be improved. And yeah, PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X and S, that is standard, which we always see, and it does say including performance mode features for high frame rates. This is where I mean about that 120 frames per second. It's possible we'll be getting 120 frames per second on Xbox Series X and PlayStation 5, and maybe the Xbox Series S, we don't know. Now, something interesting is that on Xbox Series X and S already, there's 60 frames per second. With the FPS boost feature on those consoles, you can already get 60 frames per second, making it a very playable experience actually. One of the main issues really is the crashes, which I'll get onto soon, but yeah, on PlayStation 5 it's 30 frames per second, which for a mainly first-person game really isn't ideal in my opinion, especially in 2023, and obviously that's going to change, but we're getting high frame rates. Now, whether this will be 60 frames per second or 120, I don't know. This hasn't been confirmed, but when it says high frame rates, I think it's possible there could be 120 frames per second. Maybe a 60 FPS mode and 120 frames mode as well. That would be pretty cool. So maybe 3 modes, we don't know. It could be that there's a, you know, a balance mode which uncaps the frame rate or something like that. We'll just have to see how that works. But 120 frames per second mode is actually possible. I do think that is a possibility. We'll definitely get a 60 frames per second mode across all platforms, but it's possible that on Xbox Series X and PlayStation 5, maybe the Series S, I don't know, we'll get 120 frames per second, but we'll just have to wait and see. And then they'll say there'll be quality features for 4K resolution gameplay, so of course there'll be 4K resolution supported. That might be across all performance modes, or it might just be on, you know, a fidelity mode where you can get the highest resolution, or sometimes the performance mode gets the higher resolution because it's not using, you know, all of the ray tracing and everything like that. It is able to get a higher resolution on the performance mode. And finally, we have the bug fixes. Now, one of the main things that needs to be fixed is, of course, the crashes when you enter certain areas. That is a massive issue with Fallout 4 at the moment on console and really needs to be fixed. It's a pretty big issue because right now on Xbox Series X and S is a great experience. Other than that, that is the only real issue, to be honest. Everything else, there's a few other minor issues, I'm sure, but that is the main issue, is the crashes when you enter certain areas, and that needs to be fixed, and definitely something that I think will be fixed with this next gen version, which should have been fixed, you know, many years ago, but it just hasn't been, so hopefully that'll be fixed with this. But yeah, since the game's already 60 frames per second on those consoles, then, you know, having this update won't be as drastic, but the main thing that will be a significant change will be the bug fixes, I think, for the Xbox consoles and PC as well, although obviously on PC it'll be nice to go above 60 frames per second or so. So I now do just want to talk a bit about how this next gen update would work when you actually go to play it. So it's possible that this would just be an update for the already installed version. On PC, that is definitely how it will work. You will just have to update the version of the game you already have installed, like it works with every other game that gets a next gen update on PC. But I think on console, it's likely you'll have to re-download the game, but of course you'll re-download the next generation version of the game instead of the older version. It's possible your save will transfer over, but it's also possible that it won't. We'll just have to see if that is the case. On some games it will transfer over on other next generation upgrades, but on others you do just have to start a brand new save. We'll have to see how it works since it is just a story game. It'll be interesting to see how that does all plan out, but we'll just find out as we get closer to release date, or on the day it does release. That's when we'll find out information like that. So now it is time to look at the possible release window for the Fallout 4 next generation update. So it recently got leaked, or well, sort of seen on one of the launchers, the GOG launcher, that the release date for Starfield is June 29th, and I do think this is a pretty likely release date with a reveal, well, sort of showcase for Starfield being right around the corner. I do think that June 29th seems like a very likely date for this to release. Now, with that release date in mind, I think that any time after June, or well, any time after the summer, we can see this next generation version for Fallout 4 release. So I would say from September onwards is when the Fallout 4 next generation update is likely to release. Since we haven't really had any more news on it since that basic bit or tiny paragraph of info with the 25th anniversary, I do think that it will release sometime after the summer. So I would say from September onwards is when we can expect this Fallout 4 next generation update to release. But I could be wrong. Maybe it will release before then. I hope it does release before then, since that would, you know, we'll get it sooner. Maybe it will release before Starfield. I just find it unlikely, since obviously Starfield has more info and it's a bigger thing really than this next generation update for Fallout 4, and since there isn't really much info on this next generation update yet, I think it's unlikely it will release before Starfield. So yeah, I would say anytime from September onwards, just so it doesn't really interfere with that Starfield launch, and they're getting, you know, the most amount out of that launch for both of these really. So yeah, I would say from September onwards is when we could see this launch. And that does just about wrap up things here. We went over everything we know so far about this Fallout 4 next gen update, and of course a possible release window for the game. I do think it's pretty likely. I would love to hear your thoughts on that down in the comments below though, as when you do think this will release. Now, I have done a video just like this, but instead I'm going over everything we know about the possibility of a Fallout 76 next generation update, and if you're interested in watching that, then a link to that video is on the screen now, and you can go ahead and join me over there.